Hey girl, Marissa here. You are listening to the Codependummy podcast. As a young woman, you have been raised, reinforced, and rewarded for putting the needs of others above your own. That is, for being codependent. Now in your 20s, you're exhausted, exasperated, and enveloped in crap relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. This podcast is to help you undo all that so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. Let's get to it. Hey girl, hey. Welcome to the Codependummy Anthem, song number 1, part 3. The last installment, which, geez Louise, this has been long, right? How's the tempo for you? Would it be better to have this in just one episode? Do you like all the minute details? Because when I came up with this idea, I was not picturing a 3-part breakdown and analysis of Olivia Rodrigo's favorite crime song. Apparently, I can't do that with all the codependummy material I have from my life. So let me know if it's too slow, if it's great. Feedback is welcomed. I will say I have gotten some feedback from some listeners who love the segment, including Mary, who she shared on Instagram. You guys can follow me at Therapy with Marissa. It's my practice site. I'm a licensed therapist for those of you who are new. Mary commented, and she said she loves the new segment. She's 73, had a recent breakthrough in her healing journey, and the song is perfect. Thank you for sharing. That's what Mary said. So, Mary, thank you. Thank you, Mary. One announcement. Are you doing the self-validation challenge? Listen to the episode that aired on June 21st for details, and stay tuned for a surprise next week when we hit the 30-day mark from that episode airing. What's it going to be? I don't know. You guys have to find out. So, anywho, in this episode, I'm going to continue with the new segment introduced the last 2 weeks that involves me breaking down a song that is quintessentially codependent, right? Yes, we are applying favorite crime to my saddest, thirstiest, and most codependent intimate relationship. Emphasis on intimate because I've had a lot of relationships that were sad, thirsty, and codependent. They just all didn't involve ex-boyfriends. I'll discuss ways I relate to the lyrics, how songs like these reinforced me to stay in relationships like that relationship, and answer the question, how do we stop relating to songs like this? There is a link to the song in the show notes. Mom, if you haven't listened, you should give it a listen because you texted me that Olivia Rodrigo was at the White House. Olivia Rodrigo was at the White House last week, and it's a good song. So, also, if anyone has songs to suggest, please email Marissa at codependummy.com. I will add them to a playlist to analyze at a later date. Final installment and study of favorite crime. Starting out, how are we defining codependency, baby girl, right? A way of being where you prioritize the feelings, wants, and needs of others in an unconscious attempt to fulfill your own feelings, wants, and needs. I'm also going to tie in David Malin's definition of codependency, right? 2 people with an intense need in relation to another. And this phenomena I've been discussing, compulsion to repeat, repetition, compulsion. coined by Sigmund Freud, which suggests we have a tendency to expose ourselves over and over and over again, right? Compulsion, to a distressing or painful situation, although we typically have forgotten the origins of the compulsion. We typically have forgotten the situation. This is due to, so why do we have this compulsion? Well, it's an unconscious, okay, you guys are getting used to me saying conscious, unconscious. I argue a lot of what we codependents do is unconscious. We're not really thinking so much as feeling and being so attuned. I don't know what the word is for other conscious, but we are just so conscious of others. But we have this compulsion to repeat due to an unconscious attempt to, quote, master, end quote, the situation, rather than continue to let it master us. Unfortunately, when we keep getting in these situations, it doesn't tend to work out in our favor, right? It's like that quote, wherever you go, there you are. Or wherever you go, there is your compulsion to repeat. If you tend to date or befriend individuals who are not emotionally available, is it possible that despite all their love and care, one or both of your parents was not emotionally available to you either? You're just repeating that in your current relationships. An example, in her book Wild by Cheryl Strayed, which I recommend to everyone, aspects of codependency evident to me throughout the book. So as a young woman, Cheryl, she was struggling in her relationships with the abandonment of her father. Her mom died in her early 20s of cancer, and she spontaneously decides to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. So just one part, Cheryl is going to therapy before she does the hike, and she's telling her male therapist, I am detached from the men I sleep with. I'm like a man, right? I just sleep with them and then leave. And her therapist asks her pointedly, who detached from you? Right? Like, oh, burn, therapist, burn. But he was pointing out, like, hey, you are caught in this compulsion to repeat where you are repeating, right, this painful and stressful situation that happened to you as a young woman. However, you feel empty, unfulfilled, and unsatisfied in your relationships, and your dad hasn't come back, right? So repetition, compulsion. Let me know if you have any questions. And really, the takeaway for you today, the last 2 weeks in general, something went down when you were younger. I don't know what it is. I don't know how traumatic it was. I've talked about big T trauma, right? Car accidents, rape, witnessing a murder, and little T trauma, emotional neglect, being teased at school. One time, I remember I went to the bathroom in preschool, and all the boys in my class came and watched me go to the bathroom because there weren't doors. And that sucked, right? So, not huge. And also, how do you think I felt going to the bathroom for the remainder of my time there? Probably not that great. So, something went down, baby girl, whether you remember it or not, and it is likely still affecting you today. If you keep finding yourself in the same or similar situations over and over and over, especially in your dating, professional, and social relationships, it's likely to be related to a painful or traumatic situation in your past, and you are stuck in the compulsion to repeat. Just something to ponder, ruminate, and reflect on. Okay? The situation we are analyzing, the 14-month dating relationship I had at 21, and the past 2 episodes, I described the first 4-5 months. Today's episode, I'm going to be rounding up and talking about up to the 6-month mark of my relationship. Let's break down the lyrics and apply them to in the timeline. So, excuse me. Olivia sings, "Well, I hope I was your favorite crime." That is not the key. But in English, "Well, I hope I was your favorite crime." Slight review, right? We've been off and on for 6 months. Ex-boyfriend and I drew this amazing boundary. It is her, his ex-girlfriend, or me. We both then violated said boundary when he came to my house, arguably a week and a half later, and we slept together. Then I reconstructed said boundary, kept it up for the next week and a half. This is where we pick up. And there are dogs in the background, so we're just sending some love to all the animals in Marissa's life that if she's recording in a home environment, they are going to be around. So just love to those animals. So I was just, I drew the boundary and I was sad all over again. And I don't think I told certain friends and family members immediately after that he had come, we had slept together. I am codependent, as in dependent on the positive attention, affection, and approval of others. So I'm not going to advertise to my dad and my therapist that I completely ignored their sound advice to set and maintain my boundary. And it really was omission, right? Gotta love omission. You're not lying, but you're not telling the truth. I would argue that omission is a common defense tool and strategy of codependence. Would you agree, my sweet codependummy? The action of excluding or leaving out someone or something? Yes, I do that all the time in order to avoid losing your affection, attention, and approval. So, omitting a lot, the omissions are building, and I returned home for Thanksgiving, all kinds of sad, mysteriously sad. Why am I sad? I'm sure people wondered. And I honestly do not know how I was functioning at the time because I was thinking about ex-boyfriend all the time, obsessing, really. But got through my studies, went to work, packed to get home, and hung out with friends and family. On Thanksgiving morning, I remember waking up to multiple calls and multiple texts, both missed, from him. Right? And I think there was even a "call me when you can." Having this intense need for him, I remember I wasn't excited that he had called and texted the evening before, partially maybe. But in reality, I was terrified because it was so conditional. It seemed to be so critical, and everything I said or did had such an impact on the relationship. I feared all the time, including the fact that I'd missed his calls and texts, that I missed my chance. I truly felt to my core that if I missed a call, if I didn't respond quick enough to a text, he would conclude, you know what, this girl isn't shit. I'm choosing my ex-girlfriend. Right? Not necessarily conscious of this, but I really was in a perpetual state of fear when it came to interacting with him. Do not fuck this up, Marissa. Do not fuck this up. So, likely shaking, I called him maybe 7 a.m. in the morning. He did not answer, and I proceeded to go back to bed and just laid there in agony, waiting for him to call. I also remember that during the time of our relationship, my sleep became worse and worse, where I would wake up earlier and start to think and obsess about him, and I would go to bed later because I was thinking and obsessing about him. This is such a random detail, and I'm curious if any of you resonate, but I would wake up so early and be so anxious that I started to have shaking leg syndrome, where I basically would lay, and I believe it was my right foot, and I would just lay there. I have some material here, but I would just lay and I could hear my foot and I was just so anxious. I mean, there was no going back to sleep once I woke up and started thinking about him. So there I was laying in bed, foot shaking out of control. And he called and alluded to, I miss you. I've been thinking, and I want to see you this weekend. I want to, right? I don't know if he really said, I'm done with my ex and I choose you 100%, because it was always vague and gray, but I sensed there was I want to move forward with you. Felt like I had been chosen, right? I was his favorite crime. I hoped I was, and I was. I was his favorite crime, not the ex-girlfriend who had been interacting with him for the past 2 months. He was choosing me. I remember feeling so good and sharing with him. I was like, oh, it's Thanksgiving. I am grateful to have you in my life. You have been such a blessing. Gratitude, grateful, thankfulness, appreciation. I, and I remember him saying, I'm thankful for you too. You the best. We love that Drake song. Best I ever had. And I proceeded to have a day filled with blissful favorite crime behavior, right? We texted, and the next day, Black Friday, I said goodbye to my family and friends 3 days earlier than I needed to technically leave, because it was short little fall break. I didn't need to be back in Santa Barbara till that Monday. But I was headed up the coast because I was his favorite and I was going to go see my man. My friend from high school drove me up, and I filled the car ride with the story of our love, right? We met at a party, fucked on a kitchen counter, started hooking up, went to a rave. His evil ex-girlfriend came back. I've been strong and bold in setting boundaries, and he chose me. I'm his favorite, right? Just like so much validation and esteem and envy. I sense I was able to create envy in others. And I did. I just felt so much fuller and more interesting and exciting and worthy of attention because I had this romantic story and he picked me. So I was like, love you, bye. Like Katie Heron from Mean Girls. My high school friend dropped me off. But that compulsion to repeat is real. Unconsciously, I found a guy who put me in a situation that reminded me of what had been familiar to me about love throughout my childhood, adolescence, and young adulthood. I was in a relationship where I was being compared and competing with another girl, fighting for his attention, affection, and approval. And I unconsciously chose someone who ultimately would not choose me because I felt like I'd never been chosen before. The last lyric we are unpacking, Olivia sings, "'Cause baby, you were mine. 'Cause baby, you were mine." Referencing, I hope I was your favorite crime, 'cause baby, you were mine. You're my favorite crime. I was unpacking, likely dancing and shimmying around my room, and my phone rang. His ex-boyfriend. And I was like, hey. And he said, hey, Marissa. Cue internal heartbreak, stomach drop, throat tighten, and whatever other visceral response my body could have had knowing what was about to happen. I can't remember exactly. I knew the way he said, hey. And there's something like, Marissa. And I remember saying, don't. He apologized and went on to explain that somehow within the last 36 hours, he had changed his mind and would not be coming down to see me. He chose her. I will admit that in preparation for this week's recording, the memory of that still made me tear up 12 years later. Because that moment captured so much hurt, pain, and sadness I experienced growing up and feeling like I was unwanted, unlovable, and lesser compared to others. I have learned more recently that none of that is true, but that's how I felt and perceived the world at the time. And that is how I felt and perceived the world as a little girl. I remember I told him, I understand. Somehow I conveyed, understanding, support, right? Took it like a champ. I didn't tantrum, I didn't curse, I didn't hang up. I responded as maturely as a 20, 21-year-old would, but then I was resolute. Please leave me alone and never talk to me again. The ups and downs, the ins and outs, the highs and lows, the made and canceled plans. I'm done. Ex-boyfriend, I'm done. And can't necessarily remember after that. He agreed, apologized, and again, like I had just a few weeks prior, I crumpled to the floor like a wilted flower and cried. Right? Just picture again, just the saddest, most crumpled up, pathetic, lonely, rejected version of me. I'd been in the running to be his girlfriend. I'd been auditioning for the past 6 months, fighting for the main role. I did theater, but I can't remember the reference, but right, the lead, fighting for the lead with another competitor for the 2 most recent months in our relationship, and I was not chosen. All the things I did, you guys, you have heard the timeline up until now, and yet it wasn't enough. I had put his feelings, wants, and needs above my own, right? That was the priority. With this unconscious hope, sometimes semi-conscious, mostly unconscious hope, that by doing that, eventually I'd fulfill my own feelings, wants, and needs for love. Baby, you were my favorite crime. Baby, you were mine. He was my favorite. I had picked him over and over and over again. Despite all the red flags, despite all the ups and downs, despite an active fellow female romantic in his life, I had picked him. And I had not been innocent either. Speaking of crimes, I slept with that other guy. I drew boundaries and violated them myself. And I did what I could to manipulate him into picking me. I was not genuine in all my love and attention towards him. Sometimes I did have an ulterior motive to win, right? I wasn't necessarily doing things out of the kindness of my heart. I was doing it so he would pick me. All the things I did just so I could call you mine. There were other guys around, right? Apparently, because I slept with one of them. And also, remember that coworker of mine who I was originally on the phone with when ex-boyfriend first approached me? There were guys at parties, like they were around, but I had a compulsion to repeat. And I could just I could sniff it out of ex-boyfriend. He was the chosen one, the favorite who was likely going to help me repeat and possibly master what I hadn't up to that point, right? Compulsion to repeat. I wanted to choose him and be chosen in return. So this is the end of applying the song to my relationship for now. Okay, we're just gonna pause on the scene of me being all crumpled up like a wilted flower, and we will continue discussing this relationship in future episodes, future songs potentially, to go from there. Okay, so just leave me on the floor crying and sad and feeling so unlovable. Till then, I want to highlight how, despite their best efforts to convey the true emotions that we feel through their lyrics, it's songs like these that reinforced rather than discouraged my relationship with ex-boyfriend. To be clear, I am not blaming the song, the songwriter, or the media in general for portraying relationships similar to mine and ex-boyfriends and unintentionally reinforcing these relationships. But they did do that. And they may reinforce you too. This is love, right? This is sacrifice, yes? This is what the beginning of relationships sometimes look like, according to this song, this show, this movie. Previously, I did see girls compete for a boy's behavior in some of my favorite movies, like Katie Heron in Mean Girls. I heard songs where the female singer would talk about her, the other girl in her boyfriend's life, and it would resonate so much. I definitely had a lot of people in my life discouraging me from being in and pursuing ex-boyfriend, being in a relationship with him. But not everybody did, and not all the time. He was covered in red flags, and I kept choosing him. I'm not blaming the songs, the shows, the movies, and also just curious, how have the representations of relationships in the music and media you've consumed reinforced your codependent behavior? Just questioning that. And we're going to conclude with this discussion, right? This answering of, how can we stop resonating with these songs? How can we stop singing to them like they are our codependent anthems? Not to get all psychotherapist on you, but that is my background and training. So to stop, baby girl, you need to go to the source. What's familiar about this? We need to bring it back to the past. Like the movie Back to the Future, I am the driver saying, back to the past. Compulsion to repeat. The tendency of an individual to expose herself again and again to a distressing, painful, or traumatic situation, although she has forgotten the original painful, distressing, traumatic situation, right? The origin of the compulsion. To overcome, it involves an effort to break the cycle of repetition by helping her become conscious of it, processing the original trauma so she doesn't have to keep doing the same thing over and over again. I'm not Olivia's therapist. But I wonder if I sat down with Miss Rodrigo, took her history, and would start to see that, hearing about her childhood, her past experiences, and in particular, her relationships with her mother and father, it might reveal to me an experience where the lyrics she's now singing about a boy could just as easily be sung about her mom and dad. Right? If we are stuck in repetition compulsion, who are we actually singing about? Instead of picturing her recent ex-boyfriend, perhaps unconsciously, she's singing about all the things I did just to call you mine to her mom and dad. Right? Maybe she tried really hard in school. Maybe she followed all the rules. Maybe she helped clean up after her mom and dad had been arguing, right? Just so she could call them hers. And the lyric, all the things you did, potentially remembering, recounting the things that they had done wrong to her. And no, not all the lyrics apply. Okay, I broke down that lyric and I defended you to all my friends. Right? We may not defend our parents, especially to all our friends. But then again, maybe we do. Maybe we do to a certain extent. And at the heart of this song, her compulsion to repeat, may underlie the whole thing. There may be a yearning, a longing for her to call her mom, her dad, hers, maybe her mom and dad, right? That origin, that painful, stressful, traumatic situation that keeps happening later in life in her romantic relationships. There's a possibility that deep down, those songs are about a significant relationship in her past. Most likely her mom and dad. As you will see in upcoming Codependummy Anthem episodes, you may relate and resonate with these sad codependent-laden songs, but I want you to question who you are singing to. Is it a lover? Is it a friend? Or is it your mom and dad? The intense need I had for my ex-boyfriend, right? That way of being where I prioritize his thoughts, feelings, and needs. Wants, feelings, and needs. I keep interchanging thoughts and wants, so I apologize, everybody. But thoughts, wants, feelings, and needs in an unconscious attempt to fulfill my own. I did that with my mom and dad too, right? Like, just such a keen observer as a child, throughout my childhood. You know, if they had an argument, someone was having a hard time, if there was tension, conflict, silence, stress, right? The slow development to prioritize their thoughts, feelings, and needs hoping that mine would be eventually fulfilled too. It's the same type of interaction, engagement that started then and there and just reverberated, right? This ripple effect in all my relationships. And you have heard it on the Codependummy dilemma. These listeners have come on and talked about their moms, their dads, their relationships, and the interconnections. Interviewers, right? These therapists, coaches, yoga instructors, they have talked about their family. They've talked about mom. They've talked about dad. And I can admit all the things I did just so I could call my mom and dad mine. I hoped I was their favorite. They were my mom and dad, so they were definitely my favorite. I think most children unconsciously have that locked in for survival. And with ex-boyfriend, I wanted him to pick me just like I wanted my parents and other significant adults in my life to do the same. So, baby girl, you stop relating to these songs when you get to the source of your compulsion to repeat. Right? You stop relating to these codependent songs when you get to the source of your codependency. What is similar between what is ailing you now and what ailed you in the past? What painful or stressful situations have you been through you are currently unconsciously trying to master in order to prove whatever you concluded about yourself before? Right? You're trying to prove that wrong. What about these songs is really about you as a little girl feeling unloved, unwanted, rejected, second best, etc. Your homework is to identify your favorite sad song. Like, what songs are on your playlists that you tend to fall back on and resonate with oh so much? It's first step. Second step, email me because I want to possibly unpack it here, marissa@codependummy.com. Third step, listen to it and ask yourself, what about this song, the lyrics and emotions remind me of something from my past? And just really, really take some time. What about this breakup song, this love song, could be about the origin, the source of my compulsion to repeat, of my codependency, of these relationships that are not serving me? How were you not served before? That is episode 30. That is a wrap. Marissa, out. Till next time, please remember, if you are feeling unseen, I see you. If you are feeling unheard, I hear you. And if you think that you don't matter, know that you matter to me. I want you to get out there so you can stop playing small and start taking up some goddamn fucking space, baby girl. I will see you next week.
You're still here? Just kidding. Girl, this is not therapy and I'm not your therapist, okay? This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the publisher, or the guests are rendering any legal, clinical, or other professional information. If you want or need a professional, you should find one.